Today what we really wanted to talk about, I suppose, was certainly the need and the focus on attracting and engaging top talent. And certainly when I think about that as a topic, and I think about the role of the HR function, and certainly when I reflect on the 18 years that I've been doing IT recruitment, the function has evolved so much. And certainly the role of HR professionals has been shifting for some time now. In fact, we might all, probably a lot of us might not remember when they actually used to be called personnel departments a long time ago now. And then of course became HR departments, and now in many cases referred to as the people and culture team. So there's been a big shift. And that's really transformed the way too that organisations see, I think, the human element. With the first question, which is really around how the role of the HR function has evolved. And I suppose too, linking into that, how can HR leaders really, I guess, link that importance of talent management to the business strategy? And I might sort of open up to Barb first, if we can.
60% of our people are millennials, born between 1980 and 2000. There's been enormous amounts of research globally about what is it that appeals to them, what are they looking for. And if we look at the really core things that matter to them around, they want to come to work every day and feel inspired by their manager, they want to feel a sense of purpose, they want to go home and feel like they made a difference. They want to grow fast, they want to move sideways, they want to have different kinds of experiences, they don't want a linear career path, they're completely turned off by the idea of a linear career path. They want to work with people who are smart, who are different, who are driven. And our major challenge and execution risk is our ability to find and attract the quantity of people we need at the quality level as fast as we need. I think one really fundamental thing in HR, which I don't see many companies doing well, is workforce planning. Mm-hmm. You know, workforce planning is one of the three things I think that you got to get right. I think the other is process. As you learn to scale, process is something you've got to love and respect and hire people who are really good at it. Having a clear picture of what kind of people do you need, not now, not 3 months, but in 5 years' time. Mm. And then you work back from that, and that very much drives the other aspect of our product roadmap.
HR has really had to become the custodian of culture and really drive and teach managers to actually own the culture as well.
I often sort of think of Jim Collins, the author, who says it's about getting the right people on the bus, which is obviously really, really critical because we all know the cost of making a bad hire, which is often 2.5 times cost of salary. So if you're paying an IT professional $100,000 and you get it wrong, that's potentially a $250K cost to the business. But then, of course, the challenge is how do you actually engage them and keep them, which is a challenge too, because the typical turnover in the IT industry is 2 years.
Top talent quickly and efficiently, so we're making sure that we have we're using the right technologies and tools to attract the right kind of people, that we're not just relying on the traditional spray and pray approach of just posting on Seek and these traditional boards, but actually going and seeking out where these people would be hanging out, where these people would be interacting with like-minded people, and really trying to tailor our approach to suit.
Yeah. So what are we doing to attract people and having infrastructure around them to support them to develop? So we can't, buy the right skills and experience. How do we nurture them? And that's something we're looking at now in terms of a female junior dev program, so getting people in who have practically no experience and then giving them a really intensive, like an apprenticeship really, to get them up to speed, to train them in the ways that we work.
What do they want to be known for? And obviously there needs to be a 100% alignment between that story that they put out there and the reality. But I think at the end of the day, in terms of who really shapes why people want to come to REA, it's about the culture, and our people are our best asset. And as much as I can go and have a profile on LinkedIn or come here, at the end of the day, someone's going to want to join REA because they've sat next to Martha and they've heard about her experience since she's been there, and why it is that she came there, and what she's felt since she's been there, and what she's been exposed to, and what she's learned, and the innovation she's seen. It needs to be really authentic. And so that means every single person needs to be a brand champion. And I think the wonderful thing about technology is that you can actually, you can leverage it for that purpose. For everyone to be a social recruiter and to be using whatever channels matter to them, I think is our goal. And I feel the way to do that is to create a culture where everyone comes to work and they love coming to work and they want to tell their friends to come and work for us. Changing the language from culture fit to culture contribution is really important, and it's a challenge in a community which relies heavily on team consensus and team fit and team similarity rather than difference.
Yeah.
So getting people to really value diversity, and diversity can be measured in different ways, but fundamentally, how is this person really going to fill out your portfolio within your team? You know, really be honest as a leader and understand where are the gaps in my team.
Talk in terms of our values alignment, so linking them to the Envato values, and then as people are going through the recruitment process, really testing them on those values, and also testing them for authenticity, I think is really important as well. So that they're going to be able to be themselves in our organisation, but yeah, very much more around values fit rather than cultural fit.
It's one of those ways that you really need to leverage being able to tap into that market. So whether you pull them into a lot of events, whether they actually start driving those events, which is something we've seen in our organisation, which has been amazing. But I think people want to hear it from the person in the job doing the work. And one of the things that we try as well is we get those managers to actually approach that talent, because the feedback and the response from us, hearing from us is not the same as hearing from the person who actually runs that team or someone that does that role. So I think we have to leverage the absolute heck out of the people that we've got that can tell that story better than we can.
By educational organisations and by employers to really be thinking about, well, how can we actually target the future pipeline, school-age children. Okay, they're not going to be working for us today, but building that pipeline of great talent for 10 years down the track. So certainly as an organisation, an initiative that we're part of and really passionate about is Go Girl, Go for IT. I'm not sure if anyone else here is familiar with it. A fantastic organisation, Vic ICT Women are behind that, and that's actually happening in August this year. Happens every 2 years. And that's a great event, I think, in terms of being able to tap into about 1,600 schoolgirls typically come along from year 8 to year 12, and it's an opportunity to really showcase and promote why it's great to work in technology.
Opportunities for mature age people as well. There's a lot of people out there who would be interested in, maybe didn't have the opportunity because of technology when they were younger to get into it. So one of the things that we're working on is a mature age internship. So actually giving the opportunity to for slightly older people or people looking at a second career to actually be involved and see what it's like to work in this kind of sector. So I guess just trying to think more broadly around where else we can provide value to people.
Massive opportunity for more of us to collaborate and create and drive programs that are actually going to raise awareness at that school age level. It's something I've spoken to a few people in this room about. So let's make something happen. But I think it would be great if we could infiltrate, a certain number of schools, run code camps, and I think if we pool resources as an industry, it's going to be much less burdensome and also have a much greater impact than if we do it as individual organisations.
And that's been great. That's been students being in teams being mentored by people at Envato, which has been really successful. So I think the universities are also aware, and I think our industry has been giving them pretty clear feedback about we're not getting the skills and the capability that we want out of graduates. So I think there's a real opportunity to educate them as well, and to make sure that when graduates are coming through that they've got the skills and they've got the style that we need. So that's an opportunity too.
11 at school, and we were chatting last night around the dinner table, and I said, so if you could choose your subjects, if you could make up your curriculum, what would you want to have? What subject? And he said he'd like to do video game analysis. And so I said, well, tell me about that. And he said, well, I think if I could, because he plays quite a lot of games which are more moral dilemma games. I mean, he does all the usual violent games, but he tells me that he does a moral dilemma because he knows I want to hear that. And so he talked through what he would do, which is, he'd analyse how do they psychologically, because he watched something on YouTube, how do they how do they create this dopamine effect with the way that they design these games? And I thought, wow, you would learn so much in terms of really core skills that matter in our sector by doing that subject. What a brilliant idea. And to be honest, schools are just in the dark ages in terms of thinking about creating an awareness and then teaching kids to go and work in digital tech, which is the industry of the future. So I don't know how to change that, but I think, whatever school comes out and does something really innovative in terms of their curriculum is going to kill it with parents.
And month, so it's always a good reminder of where we're doing well and where we're not doing so well. But our founders are passionate about it. So some of the things that we're working on is the Junior Dev program, which I've talked about a little bit already. We do have out at Invado, which is like our LGBTI group. So I think they set up the first LGBTI meetup in Melbourne probably 12 months ago. So we've sort of been doing it quite organically, and this sort of coming 12 months, I think we want to get a little bit more strategic in our focus. You know, what events are we going to commit to? You know, what does that look like? What does that look like in terms of training our managers and upskilling our workforce as well?
Okay. Yep.
Now, what we're seeing in terms of change of behaviour from having diverse group of people in recruiting shortlists is sort of a fundamental shift, and I really think sometimes you've got to just put the bold move out there and people have to come in behind you to make it work. I think the other thing is you've got to show them the visuals. You know, I went along to our IT leadership meeting where we are not 40% female and showed them a picture of here's the promotion rates for women in the last 5 years, here they are for men, and here are all the women that have left, and here are all the women that are here, and what are you going to do about it? So I think when it comes down to fixing this, it's got to be pushed down to the managers. You know, the same with hiring, to be frank. I think the talent team does a lot and has a core role to play, but as a hiring manager, it's your responsibility to know where talent is. You know, the recruiting team cannot possibly stay on top of, in our business, you know, the sort of many hundreds of roles that we've got going. So I think to create the expectation and to help them do that and build that network and build that social recruiting persona is a really important aspect if you're going to scale, because you have to get everyone in the business helping you find talent. You can't leave it to a core team of 4 or 5 or 8.
Our workforce is highly engaged, so we do 3 to 4 engagement surveys a year using a tool called Culture Amp. So we get a really good level of engagement in terms of, you know, would I recommend this as a great place to work to a friend? How many people respond to the survey? So even though they are highly engaged, we still have that issue in tech that most people stay around the sort of 2 to 3 year mark. So while they're there, they're loving it, but then, you know, suddenly they're gone because, you know, they've had 3 job offers on Twitter that day, or they want to go for more money.
Holding on to people, but people leave managers. And he talks about this idea of if you can make someone feel every day in your team that they know who they've made a difference to that day, they know who their job matters to. So in the recruiting team, you know, and this has happened in our team, we've hired a lot of people, you know, we've finally found that fantastic business partner, and it's taken us 6 months. And, you know, we've seen countless CVs and done, you know, many interviews, and we're, you know, and the person who's really leading that gives that recruiter, here's a bunch of flowers, I love you, we're all high-fiving. It just, you feel, I hope, she felt amazing because that person has made a fundamental difference to me in the quality of people that we bring in, because it's such a critical role, to the person who's going to manage that person, and they really can see the difference that their role makes to the organisation and to someone else in the organisation. So I think it's about creating amazing managers. And I feel like for REA, if we can have every manager be amazing, then people won't leave. I think all the other stuff is kind of nice and hygiene, but at the end of the day, if our managers are able to make you feel great and to really make you believe that they care about you and they care about your future and they're creating opportunities and they're sponsoring you, which is more than mentoring you, I think that what is...
One of the things that we do particularly well is really have really open and honest conversations from the outset with candidates. I think we need to be mindful that with the age we're in these days, there are a lot of opportunities for people to move, as we've discussed. So if we can hold on to somebody, some top talent, really harness and nurture and use their value for 2 or 3 years, and then they're going to move on, then it's a better thing to do than to not have had them in the first place. So I think we need to be making sure that we're providing them with opportunities to really use all of their talent as possible, you know. And then if we do get to a situation where they are moving on, then giving them the best opportunities and the best support around that as well. I think we're mindful of creating a whole candidate experience from sort of the very start through to that point where they may move on to something else. So really just making sure that we're checking in that we are doing as much as we can for those staff. One of the things that we particularly focused on is internal mobility. I guess we're 1,200 strong. We're at a size where we have the opportunity to do that, to be able to provide people that next opportunity after sort of a couple of years once they've mastered that job. So that's a big focus for us as well going forward. So
our technology work for us in a better, smarter way so that we can empower the individuals to drive their career. It comes back in our culture amp surveys around that learning and development, and sometimes they just don't realise that they are learning almost every day because we throw stuff at them that they've not done before, and that's learning. So really providing a lot of transparency and visibility around the opportunities across the company, even though we are still smaller, that they do exist, and if they want to do something, they can put up their hand and they can do it because it's going to make an impact. We support it.
If you think of the core talent pools, which in digital tech are around UX, data scientists, data engineers, product managers, etc., is to create a core cohort of people, because I think people join the organisation, but then really what we're selling to them is a narrative around what is it to be a data scientist at REA? What do we mean when we say we care about data? What do you do every day? What are the different careers that people do? And I think to get them to own that narrative, but to also own the cohort. So if they have a picture of, in the next 5 years, we need to find another 20 or 30 or 40, how can we develop those that are here now? Where do they sit on the talent matrix? Where do they sit in terms of capabilities and skills? And what are we going to do to grow that? With the support of HR, but they're the best determinants of what that needs to look like and how they can own across the business that responsibility. So how can we get someone to go and work in the consumer team for 6 months or 1 year, because that's going to give them the understanding around, developing iOS. And then we bring them back into one of the other lines of business, because the challenge when you're really big and you're organised according to, a P&L model, and so you're very focused on what's it going to take to deliver to my numbers, is you need to think about talent across the organisation. So I think the way to do that is to have these cohorts or communities who really feel a great sense of ownership and pride and accountability in creating REA as the best place to be if you're a UX designer, because we really think consciously and thoughtfully about how do we grow talent, whether that's conferences, whether that's through career opportunities, how do we retain talent, because it's not one size fits all in terms of engagement. That's why I think ultimately it's down to the manager, because what works for you is going to be different to what works for you. So I think the more that they feel like that's their problem to own and solve, both from a talent acquisition, talent development, talent retention, I think that's the effective collaboration that's going to work for the business.
Through in terms of people wanting more career development conversations, wanting more L&D opportunities. So we're excited that we're actually going to have an L&D person in our HR team, which is exciting, so that we've got an internal resource who can be sourcing courses and a platform for sharing knowledge, because I think that's something we can do better at. And I think the other part with internal recruitment is how are you keeping an eye on the talent that you do have when the opportunities do come up, and the bigger you are, the more challenging I think that can be. And I have a few examples of where we've done it really well, and people have had really good internal opportunities, but it's just been an informal conversation between the directors about, I've got someone great in my team, and that's how it happens. So how do you have some good systems and process around that so that everyone gets that opportunity and you ask the right people?
Do we build and develop champions within, or do we go out and hire champions? And I think, perhaps it needs to be a blend of both. But I think too, really that career planning and career development piece is really key. And I think you're right, Jessica. I think a lot of organisations maybe are fearful of having that conversation because they're thinking, well, what happens if we can't meet their request? But people, I think we all know people just want to be heard. So if they've got the opportunity to actually share their aspirations, then that's always a good thing, whether you can deliver on that at that time or not.
Leadership is to get, even at the ELT level, them spending less time one-to-one with their direct reports, but actually getting out at large and really building a presence and a profile and an understanding of what we're doing strategically in a broader group of people. So for our CEO to go and spend 2 hours with the CXP team, to go and spend 2 hours with the delivery leads, that's really scaling leadership, right? It's getting in front of a large group of people who feel heard as a cohort, and they get a sense of what does the strategy mean to them. How do we think about customer centricity? What are we doing to build amazing customer experiences for the CXP for them firstly to be heard around what they think we should be doing by the CEO, and then to hear what we're doing about it is an incredibly powerful way to sort of grow leadership awareness and leadership capabilities
already, because they're the ones that are going to build that next generation and help build that capability. And I think they've got an obligation to do so and to build next leaders. So I think that's another area that should be built in from a capability perspective. If you're going to take on leadership, then you are required to then pass that legacy on to others and be responsible for building the next level.
Hopefully one day we'll get to that point of, constructive conversations all year round, so you don't need to do that. We use a great little tool called Small Improvements. So it is quite broad, so it's really about at performance review times, employees doing their own reflection about what's gone well and what hasn't gone well, and any other thought, and then the career development conversation, and then the manager gets to do a bit of an assessment too, and sitting down to discuss that. We also do quite a lot of 360 feedback, so we also use that tool to do that, definitely towards the end of people's probation, and then when a staff member or a manager requests it. So we're trying to create a culture of feedback. So one of our values is tell it like it is. So we're trying to practice what we preach. But even that, I think you need to train your managers well in that, because to give the 360 feedback, but also for the peer review stuff.
Skilled at being people leaders. And, we have a question in our engagement survey, are we good at having tough conversations? And we're not. And so how do we build a culture, regardless of whatever fancy tools exist or yammer, where people actually know how to do that and feel comfortable to do that? That's really the challenge for us. And I think, like most things to do with culture, it starts from the top. And yesterday we shared our engagement survey with our leadership team, and one of the questions the leadership team asked was, who's the best amongst the ELT at having tough conversations? And of course it's our CEO. It's something that we're trying to work on a lot as an executive team, and by doing it ourselves, we're therefore expecting that we're all going to go back and do that with our teams. But I think our process is pretty light touch. It's a mid-year and an end of year, but at the end of the day, it's how can we on a regular basis just build a comfort with giving people that feedback. What's the one thing when you walk out this room that you're going to tell me you want me to do differently? What's the one thing that you really liked about what I did? It's just, I think, the frequency, and it reduces the incredible anxiety attached to we're having our full year performance review. So it starts with the top, and I think it's very much a cultural challenge rather than something that can be fixed through a lot of process or fancy tools.
Yeah, Tom had been at MYOB. We certainly do encourage ongoing conversations and discussions, and we are mindful of that. That some managers are reluctant and don't want to have those conversations. So we've actually put a framework and a training plan in place to enable them to have more confidence around that sort of thing. So there is a acknowledgement of that. It's something that does need to continue to be worked and developed. So it's something, hopefully in the coming years, that will those conversations will be easier and more frequent as well throughout the year.
People are better at giving and receiving feedback than others, so to focus on the ones that need the most support and help to get better at having those difficult conversations, and the more you do it, I think the more it becomes actually just a culture. Actually, we just have these conversations. This is what we do here.
Yep.
It's kind of how it works, which makes it a lot easier. I'd love to have performance be just a continuum rather than a standardised annual thing. We do it quarterly, and we actually separate development conversations and performance conversations. So performance are really around goal alignment, and development's around what are you looking to do next, and how can we help you do that, and what skills can we develop in you, as opposed to this how you're tracking on what you've got to deliver to.
Engagement survey is anyone who's got 5 reports or more sees all their verbatim, and that's really very confronting when you're not used to that kind of feedback. It kind of forces you to really think about, hopefully seek to understand and think about it, that we're part of a team here, even if the feedback I'm seeing doesn't make me feel great as a manager. But the transparency, I think, and us role modelling the transparency and the whole Brené Brown of being vulnerable, I think goes a long way to creating a culture where people feel it's okay to admit that you haven't always done great. And for the CEO to come out and say, there are things here that I'm really not proud of, but I'm sharing them with you, and I'm committed to making a difference. It gives people the confidence that it's safe to do that. Leadership, like being a parent or being in a relationship, is a lifelong journey. And I think to be open and honest about how you're going along that path and demonstrating that you're committed to it does a lot to shape that culture.
That's something that we've seen shift a little in the last year. So if you work in HR, you probably know about PageUp, you probably used our system, but beyond that, we really didn't have a presence, particularly for the tech space. So a couple of different things. I mean, we hired a CTO, and that made a fundamental difference to how we positioned ourselves and how we could go out to market, so events. And then he hired people that were of the same kind of, we've got to get out there, we're actually doing a lot of great stuff, we've got to share the story, and that kind of cascaded on. So that was one of the ways, and we keep leveraging that now, and it'll keep going. Another important thing, I think, is to know your audience. So we're going through a process of working with each different department around what is the persona for the target audience that we're going after for the employees that we want, so that when we think, now how do I attract this person, where would they be, what would they be doing, what's going to resonate with them, the content and the approach and who we send after them, and every sort of step of the way is very focused and very targeted, so that we have less of a chance of them going, no, I don't really want to hear from you because this is not right for me.
Board, which has been great, because we have won quite a lot of accolades. That's been really good for our brand. So people, and particularly people who may not be tech people, actually discovering who we are. So I think it's more people knowing about you, so that when they do see an opportunity or you do contact them, they kind of already know, or they've seen a little bit about you in the media or that kind of thing. And I think Cyan, one of our founders, has made quite a conscious decision now to be a brand ambassador. Like, that is a big part of her role. So she'll sit on panels, she'll be a speaker, to do a lot of that sort of external connecting with people. And our head of the developers, his role has just become a CTO role as well. So I think that's, in tech, we've recognised that that's a good opportunity for that person to be connecting with the universities and other external stakeholders, and really focusing on what we can do as a whole industry. So that's one thing that I find so lovely, is we actually are quite collaborative as an industry. It's quite collegial. We're happy to share things about each other. Whereas when I worked at KPMG, it was, don't tell Deloitte what you're doing. It's hide it.
The recruitment industry has changed, and the increase in technology and tools and sort of mindsets has really encouraged us to be a lot more collaborative in our approach. That's one of the reasons that we set up the Melbourne Recruitment Meetup, was as an opportunity for internal and external teams to get together and share those ideas, and with I guess with the aim of really making ourselves better, so that we can provide a much better service. We can use the best tools available. We can really target the kind of candidates that we want. And I think so far it's been pretty successful. But it's just really trying to share ideas and learnings. Not every tool or not every process is going to work for every company. So I think they're all on different journeys. So I think it's really important that we do come together and support each other.
Yeah.
So the first one is in the talent team is hire people who've got a lot of hustle. I've had many conversations with, and I think that's a compliment for someone in a talent role. I think the sourcing is actually really damn hard to do well, because to really think laterally about what success looks like and to get an understanding of what are the capabilities. It's not just about the title and looking for the title on LinkedIn. You kind of need to have a depth beneath that to really get your head around what is it that I'm looking for. Can someone who's an actuary come in and be a QA, for instance, or they come in and do a different role, because there are only so many QAs on LinkedIn. So I think, I'm lucky I've got a team which has amazing hustle. If I say to them that organisation has amazing culture, go and find for me people who work there, they'll go and do that. I think the other is, as we get bigger, is as much as we've got these incredible deep experts, like people who are best in class in Australia in their skill set. And to get our talent team to align to functional expertise, because we're so big now, is really the only way to do it. So they need to have deep expertise as much as the head of data needs to have deep expertise to be able to go out to market and help identify talent and sort of bring that talent on board. So for me to get an email from someone in the design community who went to a conference last week, along with our TA person who owns the design community in terms of recruiting, to say that person held my hand and introduced me to 5 other people that I wouldn't have had the confidence to do. So we've now got 5 fantastic designers who've heard about REA, and she understands what REA and design is all about, is incredible return on investment from that. So I think to think about functional expertise in your talent team And to hire people for attributes rather than anything else is incredibly important to get fantastic results in recruiting. So thank you, team. There's a couple of slides on hot jobs. And I put that up there and I'd say, and this is on a global level, there might be 5, there might be 20. Okay, let's just pause and think about who do we know in our teams? Because it's also about recognising we solve for talent globally. You know, it's not just me focused on my patch, it's about how do we work as a team here to support the business to be successful, and our incentives are structured in that way. And it's say, well, let's just think really creatively about this. If we want someone to go and head up that state and we want to really transform the way that we build that business, these are the skills we need. And you know, it might be someone in HR, it might be someone in... We're completely agnostic about what your title is and where you come from within the business.
At the moment, we've just been sort of surveying people through Culture Amp who've started with the business, you know, what their experience was from the process. And obviously, you know, 99% of it's going to be really positive because they got the job. So it's, you know, it's the end result. But from my point of view, the best feedback is from candidates who haven't had maybe a great experience. That's the goal. That's the stuff that we can actually use to really learn from and help to develop our business. Then, you know, try and determine what patterns they're brought in terms of the process that they've had, either recruiting or, you know, making sure they're recruiting the right people in the first place, or, you know, managing those people while they're here. So I think it's really valuable sort of feedback, and, you know, that's what we encourage that, because that's how we're going to get better.
Talent is everything. It's what keeps me up at night. It's what keeps my team up at night. They're here with me, which is fantastic.